The anti-Putin alliance is not joined by China, but also not so much by India. Does the West have to be afraid of a new alliance with India, China as the head of the global South against the West?
Well, I don't quite think that that's the right way to put it. I mean, just because you're not with someone doesn't mean you are against someone. I don't think it's that black or white. So India thinks of itself as a leading power, a major power in the making in its own right, and it's doing what it wants to do, as opposed to doing what China or Russia or the United States want it to do. So it's trying to negotiate that space for itself. It's a little bit upset with what's going on, but there's also a dependency with Russia. But there's also this desire not to let China be the leader. So it's a complex mix of all of these factors that are at play.
So how is the relationship at the moment between India and China?
Well, at the moment, not particularly good, especially after the border skirmishes of 2020. Things have taken a turn, in the wrong direction, so to speak. And the Indian leadership has pretty much made it clear that stability on the border is now a precondition for positive movements and positive developments in other aspects of the relationship. And that's not forthcoming in the immediate future.
Looking at the Indo-Pacific region, AUKUS, Australia, UK, US, is pushing Australia in a clear direction in aligning with the US. But isn't it rather a symbol of aggression designed to increase tensions rather than decrease them?
Well, again, this question is about the position that you begin with. So who is the destabilizing factor becomes a critical question to understand. And without taking any sides, I guess what's happening is each state, China feels the need to expand its naval forces because it's a rising power. In turn, Australia feels the need to secure its own space. So I think it's a question of whether these states are aggression-seeking or whether they are security-seeking, and so on. So I think we need to be clear of that. So as far as my Australian colleagues go, they think that they are working from a position of defense.
The EU wants to diversify to reduce its dependence from China. Are Chinese neighbors in the Indo-Pacific region a natural alternative to China?
Well, to some degree, yes, but there's no second China. So collectively, the region can absorb some of the exports, I guess, that went to China. But China is the critical player in the global economy as it stands today, and judging by what it's going to look like in the next 10 years, at least, at the very least. So other countries can buck up a little bit and take advantage, if you like, of the situation. But it's going to be difficult to replace China, including for any of the countries that are trying to decouple. There can be some degree of reduced dependency, but not disentanglement.
What about India in long term or midterm?
Well, that ultimately depends upon India's economic growth model. So far, it's not been an export. It's not been a manufacture-driven, export-led growth model. India's economic growth model is an expansion of India's internal markets and plugging into the global services economy. So very unlikely to be the next China in that sense, because it's a fundamentally different way of integrating yourself with the global economy. Unless India is able to create a space in the manufacturing sector. But even there, I personally feel that the global economy itself has shifted with new technologies like AI and 3D printing and so on. A lot of the manufacturing will be done in the rich world itself. So I think that boat has probably sailed.
But are there signs in India that they're seeing this opportunity now with rising tensions between the West and China, that India has some opportunities?
I guess it works both ways. The West also sees that there are some opportunities in India, and America's East Asian partners also think that there are some opportunities in India. And of course, India thinks that there is a space to create something for yourself at the moment. So for example, Apple is manufacturing some of its new phones. Now Foxconn has gone into India. So, but I don't think this is a China plus strategy, not a world without China strategy. Yeah.
What is China offering to South Asia? China is also reacting, right? And what is and what can China offer to countries in South Asia and Southeast Asia?
I think above all, infrastructure. China has that expertise, whether it comes to roads, seaports, railroads, hospitals, buildings, the basic infrastructure. But also, China is looking for markets for its own companies, especially as decoupling or de-risking or whatever we want to call it with the West continues. China's companies are going to need other markets. And the Indian Ocean world writ large, whether it's South Asia, Southeast Asia, parts of the Middle East, East Africa, this region has now been identified as the new growth pole. Remains to be seen, obviously, but for China's companies, this now becomes the next major market if the Western world is not available to the same degree that it was in the past.
Since Japan is aligning its interest more with the US, what are the implications Japan's relationship with China?
Yes, as you know, Japan has historical relationship with China. For example, culture, Japanese students learn Chinese character, maybe about 3,000, maybe. Yeah. So we have strong ties, socio-economic ties with China. Yes, although we have so many influence from the USA, and especially about the security issues, however, we have our own independent, specific policies about China. As for the Japanese economy, it has strong ties with China, as you know. So about the trade relationship, and yes, some supply chains, so many. So it is so difficult for us to keep the economic relation with China. And also, if the military or security is not so, some does not have any problems, no problem. However, some military tension, security tension, or more increase and higher, it's a little bit problem. So how do we keep the economic ties and also we can coping with such security issues, territorial issues, and so on? So the Japanese politicians keeps one policy to separate the economy and the politics. It is our traditional principle to keep the good relations with China. And after 1949, China adopted socialism. The political regime was different. However, Japan cannot move to other areas. Japan cannot move to the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so it is necessary for Japan to advance coexistence in East Asia. So sometimes we have some competition with China and some conflicts with China, but we have to consider the coexistence with China. However, recently, as you know, some economic security, including the economic statecraft and decoupling proposed by USA and other countries. So under this situation, it is a little bit difficult for us to keep this principle to separate economy and the politics, because the trade relationship has so many elements of the security. How do we make the part of the security in the economy much more smaller, or can control it? To advance the normal economic relations with China is a big challenge. So the separation between the economy and the politics is the one way. And secondly, a personnel relationship. Because as you know, more in Japan, maybe almost 1 million Chinese population in Japan, at least 80,000 maybe, 800,000 maybe. So we have so strong personal ties between Japan and China. So so sometimes the political situation will be much more worse. However, we can keep such a social relationship between China and Japan. So yes, this is the regional cooperation or regional natural relationship in one region. So sometimes military situation and security situation will be much more, yes, crucial. But we can keep such a personal level and the social level relationship. This is the second way. Thirdly, especially after the 21st century, we really worry about the peace in East Asia. It's a big problem. So how do we keep the peace in the East Asia? And we have to, Japan and China both, endeavor to control some accidents or control the escalation of the accidental incidents. So it is challenging for both Japan and China. So Japan and both countries started considering or negotiating about such a mechanism to control the accidental cases or the escalation. It is challenging for us to keep the peace in this region. Actually, Japan had made the aggression toward China, in history, before 1945. So we, must keep this peace in the region. Japan has its responsibility. So we have to endeavor to get this good mechanism to control such escalation and the accidents in order to keep the peace.
What can the Europeans maybe learn from Japan dealing with China?
It's so difficult for us to deal with China. Maybe China thinks China deal with Japan, maybe. But at first, we have to, we can wait for chance to improve the relationship. It's first, because some international atmosphere or global atmosphere changed. It's possible for China to change its attitude towards Japan and other countries, firstly. Secondly, sometimes China sends a signal. China can change and improve the relationship with Japan. So we have to get the information correctly. We can, yes. So for example, in 2013, Abe administration got the information to improve the relation with China. At the time, China requested Japan. Japan approached to China to improve the relationship. Japan asked China to improve it. China decided whether China accepts Japanese request or not. This is Chinese request. So Japanese side approached to China and to go to the door and ask China, we wanted to improve the relationship with you. And avoid the answer. So there's so many timing and ways to improve the relationship. So we can share such experiences. I don't know next time, however, we have some experiences to improve the relationship with China.